Hello, welcome to Saturn. These videos that I will be posting for each of the signs of Saturn in its signs, will be going into my Origin of Unity website, where I'm going to be compiling a lot of information about planets and astrology and how to read astrology and the meaning of certain aspects that we have both collectively and individually in the chart. So this is for Saturn, the planet of restriction, of the wisdom of the higher masculine, which is to work with limitation and work with any kind of perceived blockage, and see that as a propensity to get a blessing, or that there's blessings on the other side of that challenge or that difficulty that is created by the restrictions imposed by the physical world. So, of course, by that definition, Saturn rules over all types of authority. That's police, army, global governance, government. We have laws around safety. This definitely plays into Saturn. We're limited to use certain things a certain way for safety issues, to protect others. This is Saturn. Saturn wants us to work with what we perceive to be a limited situation or set of opportunities, or, for example, if you're an artist or a musician, to limit the amount of paints you're using for a painting will yield more interesting results. This is working with Saturn. So Saturn definitely is an important planet. It's one of the most important planets in the chart, behind Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, because it kind of governs our mission in this dimension. It's where our higher self and our lower kind of egoic self meet, and where we can convert the energy of our higher self, which is often a lot more than our body can handle, our vessel. We work with Saturn to bring that wisdom into a understandable state in this dimension, which requires us to translate and to transform language and awareness that we can't really speak into any language or system. It's very non-linear, into something using the systems that exist within this dimension, and that is how Saturn operates. And it can be quite a bully, because if for example, when we get high, when we take drugs, when we escape kind of Neptunian qualities, which relate to Keter in the Kabbalah. Saturn relate more to Bina, but also a little bit to Chokhmah, because Saturn work a little bit with Uranus, and Uranus rule over Chokhmah. So this is unformed wisdom, or wisdom beyond perception. And Bina is where that wisdom comes into perception. So it's to perceive and to understand the wisdom that our chart is speaking to us, that our environment in the world, the external events are speaking to us. They work with Saturn. And this kind of journey through higher drug-like states of awareness of consciousness, which is everything is good, everything is unity, everything is perfect, to this more grounded, sober translation of that information into this dimension. And through that requires a lot of work, requires a lot of strategy, requires a lot of knowing yourself, requires a lot of perseverance, patience, words all associated with Saturn when someone is building something of value. So Saturn is a very important. So what I'm going to do is go through Saturn in each of the signs and in each of the houses, depending on which sign it's in. So the first one we have is Aries, Saturn in Aries. Now, Saturn in Aries, it's an interesting one because this transit's coming up. Saturn is currently in Aquarius. He will move through Pisces and into Aries, I think in 2027 to 2030. So Saturn in Aries is quite powerful because whenever Saturn and the planet Mars come together energetically, it creates like a extreme force of ability and perseverance and capability. And whenever Mars is in Capricorn, for example, it's a similar energetic combination of grounded structure and hardcore perseverance and power and inner power. So when these two come together in the birth chart, it's when the planet of limitation and this energy of engines of spark, this birth of flame, which is representative of Aries, which is the spark of creation, the spark that can light the whole design of creation, of whatever you're doing, also artistically or creatively or creating as a life. It's the spark, and a new divine spark is coming during that time of 2027 to 2030. So it's a very interesting time. There'll be a lot of inventions during this time, a lot of need to invent, a lot of need to have new leadership. There will be issues that come up within the collective that require new leadership. It's the birth of new leaders. It's the time for new leaders. It's the time for a new kind of leader. And off the back of this Aquarius technological era, and then through Pisces, which is a lot about humanitarian, hopefully we should be in a space where we can look at the technology in the world and also the humanitarian needs that arise from such technology, and work to create new systems of governance with better leaders during the transit in Aries. Now that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario will be that we descend into war, because Mars and Saturn together is also challenging authority. So during this time, there will be a challenging of authority. And if you have this in your birth chart, you'll feel that you want to challenge authority, but within the construct of authority is the best method. And to not be overcome by the Mars tendencies to be more adolescent or destructive or reactive, but to be more strategic, to be more, to persevere. If it doesn't work, try it again. These are all themes that really work with Saturn in Aries. Now, if you have Saturn in Aries in your birth chart, this is where I'll go through each part of the birth chart. That was just a little bit of a prediction, I guess, but it's so we can choose either course. We can either choose the course of low vibration war, and we can see how Saturn in Aries plays out during this, which will be a lot of bloodshed, but also similarly will call new leaders into play through the pain and suffering. Or we can go through this with a consciousness of humanitarian and the need for new leaders, and that leaders step down and create space for new leaders and stuff like this. But we don't know how that's going to turn out. That will depend on our consciousness level, and if we understand stuff like this, and if we use that energy and don't, be abused by it. So Saturn in the sign, when you're born with the Saturn in Aries, it's often a sign that there's some kind of mission in this life that you need to lead, and you need to become the head of the snake of whatever it is that you have chosen to do. Now, what your chart will speak in terms of what your soul came here to do will be different depending on all of the other planets and how they play into Saturn in Aries. But Saturn in Aries generally signifies someone who is a leader, someone who is a challenger, someone who is an inventor, someone who is full of ideas, full of the capacity to create, the capacity to build, the capacity to come up with ideas. Maybe somebody who is better in the realm of creating the ideas and delegating this to others than somebody who is trying to make everything themselves. This sign definitely is a signal that you need to create a team, and you need to work with team, because it's opposite the sign Libra, which is about harmonizing with others. So Saturn in Aries can be quite self-driven and selfish and wanting all of the results for all of the work that they put in. A little bit me first attitude at a younger age, but as Saturn matures, as the person goes through their 30s, comes into their 40s, they should be fully aware of the propensity of this Saturn to cause a lot of problems with burning bridges and impatience, and start to build a patience and start to build a perseverance and a plan for whatever they want to do that really can withstand the test of time. Because Aries and this, if this power of the flame of Aries is used with consciousness and slowness, it can really build, and it can create something really, really powerful. And someone can be, like a musician that changes their field, or a actor who changes their field, or an inventor who creates something that completely reinvents how we use a certain technology or a certain tool. So it's a very powerful sign. Now, that's the Saturn. So it signifies somebody who would definitely be drawn towards some kind of leadership or some kind of inventive, invention-based or creative industry also. Engineering would fit into that. Anything to do with motors and machinery. Now, how that plays out in each of the houses, I will talk about now. So if you have this Saturn that kind of guides the bearer towards a fierce birthing energy of what they came here to do. If it was in the first house of self, this will definitely be a bit of a challenge because it will create quite a lot of depression, which is triggered by a lot of selfish activity that leaves the person feeling very empty, and they will have to then balance this with service to others. It's a little bit the journey of Saturn in Aries is in the first house, of having to go through a lot of things where you put yourself first to realize the value of others, but in so doing, giving yourself a very strong ability to lead and be self-governing, but then also to allow yourself to bring in other people and create harmony within the group of the leader. Now, as a young person, a Saturn in Aries in the first house will be quite immature, but as their ego breaks, they should become more a person that leads by their own charisma, leads by their own ability to attract others. But yeah, having Saturn, the planet of depression and of slowness in the first house, there can be some delays in development of the ego, development of the self, maybe following and copying others, ego-led decisions that result in kind of breakdowns later in life where you have to find a way to bring in others and to find partnership and the value of partnership. And this will be a challenge for a Saturn in Aries in the first house. It won't be easy to render control to someone else, to share decision making. So these things will be difficult for that. So that's Saturn in Aries in the first house. Saturn in Aries in the second house will give the flavor of Taurus to the Saturn in Aries. So they're working with both flavors. So this will actually be quite a powerful money creative combination of creating new forms of money, new form of currency, new kind of cryptocurrencies, for example, could be very fitting into this chart. Understanding new forms of trading. Definitely a need to find the values of what is being created. So really to understand where things are coming from. If that's not understood and it's more in the pursuit of pleasure or the pursuit of financial power and material wealth, then that will be met with cause and effect karma, and there may be some periods of losing that wealth and losing that money, and having big periods of understanding that it's not the money itself that causes that gives sustenance, it's the value that's given to the money created that creates sustenance. So this is something that's very important for Saturn in Aries in the second house. But the energy is quite impulsive. So impulsive spendings can result in very difficult karmic boomerangs, so to say. So this is a little bit how Saturn is in Aries in the second house will play out. Saturn in Aries in the third house will bring the Aries, or will bring the Saturn areas of restriction and creation of Aries with Gemini, the mind. So creating new ways to understand the mind, scientific, new experimental scientific techniques could definitely work with this. Generally, somebody who wants to test the mind, test the limits of the mind. Strong combination for self-expression. A person with Saturn in Aries in the third house will be quite bold in their unique way of expressing themselves, because Gemini rules the third house, so Gemini generally wants to show itself as an energy and enjoy the logos of identity. So Saturn in the third house will be like this, and will definitely govern someone's capacity to use their mind, and a necessity to create silence within the mind and patience within the mind to utilize this energy the best, for it not to be too scattered all over the place. shooting fire everywhere, but to really contain this fire with the Gemini energy and to restrict a little bit the mind, restrict a little bit the speech, to really hone in on the ability of a Saturn in Aries to create something with one point focus. So there's definitely going to be, with Saturn in Aries in the third house, an issue around finding, attention and overcoming any ADHD and really focusing and getting to the heart of something. So then Saturn in the fourth house, Saturn in Aries in the fourth house. This brings the power of Aries, of beginnings, of birthings, into the fourth house of home and family. So this will create quite a strong fatherly figure, but with a mother nurturing element to them. So definitely would be a great leader within the workplace. That's a very nurturing workplace, like a boss of a care institute or nursing home, something like this, nurses, anything to do with caring, teaching also. Will be a great teacher, a teacher that teaches a bit differently because of Saturn in Aries, but somebody who's definitely good at providing that kind of nurturing environment in an internal way, but in an external job. Could definitely work from home with this combination as well. Could see this person working from home, starting some kind of career, or has a mission in this life around family, around home, around ancestry, may have a mission with their own ancestors, very connected to their ancestors. Definitely good with Saturn in Aries in the fourth house, or any of the Saturn signs in the fourth house, to connect to ancestry, because Saturn connects to age and fourth house connects to ancestry. So this can bring some awareness to the mission that's supported by the ancestry of definitely the father's family, but also the mother's father's family. So powerful one there to go into the past, not so much into the future. Okay, Saturn in the fifth house in Aries. So we have fire and fire. This is very interesting. Definitely would work in any of the arts or theatrical. Could create quite a theatrical combination, maybe some melodrama in early life, but as they get older, could definitely be a very powerful figure to use charisma, because with the Leo and the Aries combined with Saturn will create quite a strong, powerful charisma, like someone you can trust, that you feel that is going to look out for you and fight for you. It's this kind of energy. So that combination is really interesting. Will also definitely signify working with children, being with children, accessing your childlike nature within your career. Having it in the fifth house definitely pushes towards that. It's a nice balance, to be honest, of this. Probably if I had Saturn in Aries, this would be the best combination, because Saturn in Aries gives this kind of anyway childlike birthing excitement of new things energy, and then the fifth house is creative. So it's a really nice combination for creativity, but a lot of fire to manage. And that could definitely burn people. A lot of anger that needs to be channeled into anger, and frustration that needs to be channeled constructively into either creativity or working with children, or some kind of activity that accesses the inner child, that allows the inner child to express itself without turning into a narcissistic adult. So that's the Saturn in Aries in the fifth house. Saturn in Aries in the sixth house. Sixth house is house of service, but self-service towards service for others. It's ruled by Virgo. So it flavors Saturn in Aries with a Virgo tendency. Now, these two combinations will probably be a little bit difficult to manage, because Saturn in Aries will want to thrust itself forward into things, whereas the house of the sixth house in Virgo will be, which is ruled by Virgo, will be pulling a little bit more to process and to rethink everything. And it can create a little bit of a bipolar combination here. But if the person with Saturn in Aries in the sixth house apply themselves very slowly into the boring things of life, throws themselves into the boring things of life, attacks the things that really they don't want to do, that take time and energy and feel like a waste, but need to get done, which is very much ruled by the sixth house, they will, create a lot of strength around their Saturn in Aries, and Saturn will be very thankful. But working with this Virgo energy will be difficult. It's going to be a little bit perpendicular to how the energy wants to move. But if the person saw that as facing things head on, facing difficult tasks head on, enjoying the things they don't want to do, they can really activate that Saturn in Aries and create someone who can be really good at taking care of themselves and really good at taking care of others, and a really strong leader that understands attention to detail. So this Saturn in Aries in general signifies leadership, because Aries is the sign of the leader. So Saturn in Aries in the 7th house of Libra. Now this creates definitely bipolar. So Saturn in Aries will be very much about self, and in the 7th house will be very much about service. Now there'll be a lot more pressure in this placement to change your selfish ways to ways of service. That said, there will be a need to explore things selfishly and by yourself in order to discover the things that you can do to help the other. So there's going to be a really strong need to understand when the time is enough of being in a selfish mind frame, of going inside, of finding your own way, of doing things your way, whatever, to transforming that around and bringing that back to service to other people. Now you'll need, with this Saturn in Aries in Libra, we'll need to know, and it'll be very hard to gauge when that is. So that will be the difficulty, and Saturn will come in as pressure to tell you when this is the time. And I would say probably between the ages of 30 and 40, Saturn will start to be like, okay, what are you doing with all of this? Are you going to help people? Are you going to keep on this path of looking after yourself, and maybe a little bit of extremes of going to the positive and the negative side, because Libra tends to do this, and Libra is a sign in general that never feels enough, so it doesn't apply themselves to things enough. So Saturn in Aries in Libra create this tension between I know I'm good, I know I'm the best, and I'm not enough. So it can create like this difficult kind of contradictory cohabitance of these two shadows, which can cause a lot of inner difficulty and need to escape the harsh lessons of Saturn. But a person with Saturn in Aries in the 7th house definitely came to learn how to lead in groups, how to lead yourself, but then also lead other people through your own ability to, stand in your truth. So it's a challenging one. So anyone who has Saturn in Aries in the 7th house, good luck. Saturn in Aries in the 8th house. Now this is also a very fiery combination, because Saturn in Aries rules Mars and the 8th house Scorpio. So this connects also to Mars. So it doubles up the Mars energy relating to Saturn in this case. Saturn in Aries in the 8th house. So Saturn in Aries in the 8th house will be flaunt with a warlike energy, where everything is black and white, where there's everyone is a winner and a loser. This will be definitely the way of seeing the world in the younger life, definitely influenced by the father in the life of the person, to see everything as a war. Now, this isn't going to work for the whole life. Peace will not be found. So at some point, this person needs to go to the depths. There will be a dive into the depths, a courageous need to dive into the depths of depression, the depths of loss, which is the 8th house, the depths of debt, of losing money, of losing resources, to understand the need for resources and to understand inner willpower, because Saturn in Aries is about an inner willpower, definitely. And Saturn in Aries in the 8th house signifies the need to go deeper into the self and deeper into the alchemical resources that we have to transform ourselves. So definitely a transformation journey with this sign, and this placement definitely can rise to very, very huge heights with lots of money and resources, but can also lose those things very easily if they aren't, rooted in a very solid psychological awareness. Definitely with this, there'll be need for a deeper psychological awareness for 8th house. So that those energies of Scorpio and darkness and psychic energy isn't used to create unnecessary black magic or unnecessary cause and effect, because this is what Scorpio, if it's not aware of itself, can do, can operate on blind revenge and cause a lot of karma. So to be careful with this one, always understand what your motives are. Saturn in Aries in the 9th house. This is a really beautiful one. It's a nice combination for like a spiritual leader or somebody who leads in some kind of humanitarian pursuit. Can be somebody who definitely works and does a lot of moving around overseas. Someone who can be a very powerful a teacher within education towards a more spiritual awareness, towards a more mythological awareness. Definitely has an energy of the mythological within that Saturn in Aries. So it's almost like that person can work more within the realm of spirituality, creation, to understand the higher nature, but then also to lead in a powerful way people towards that nature. So can definitely have a bit of a guru or spiritual leader element. Maybe a little bit more on the ego side in the beginning than other signs, because Saturn in Aries tends to come from a place of ego into a place of kind of strong leadership. So definitely early in life, maybe egotistical, later in life, may become some kind of spiritual leader, some kind of leader of community groups and of humanitarian causes. Saturn in Aries in the 9th house, generally pretty good, both fire. Definitely need to watch out for definitely about restricting speech, restricting your mouth, because anything related to the 9th house creates a little bit more of a power of the 9th house, because it's when you're aware of these spiritual concepts, when you are naturally mapped to this, you can cause more damage. So it's there's more weight and responsibility on this. In Saturn in Aries in the 10th house, it's my bad, Saturn in Aries in the 10th house. So okay, this is a very interesting, all about career, all about mission, reputation, what I came here to do. Very powerful energy to build, become CEO, entrepreneur, someone working very much with the public. A public figure also could be definitely a politician with the 10th house. Someone in service to the people, but through very egotistical kind of way. I mean, this is why I think of politician, because you need the ego in politics. You need to have a hard kind of boundary between you and other people to function as a leader. So this definitely would fit for Saturn in Aries in the 10th house. What else? Definitely a propensity towards adventure, towards wanting to climb. It's this like energy that wants to climb the mountain, that wants to challenge. This is very likes the challenge, likes to go. If this person, Saturn in Aries in the 10th house, doesn't accept the challenge, they'll probably be met with a little bit of depression, regret. They need to kind of go, they need to jump, they need to function. They're very engaged. It's a very forward motion energy that wants to do, that wants to engage, that wants to be in the life process. And through that process can learn a lot and give a lot and become a very powerful teacher, leader, CEO, anything that kind of operates at the top of a hierarchy. But a leader that can create leaders if they find the good. In the bad, this could a little bit be a corrupt army general. So just to watch out for that, to work within corruption, within shadow, to game others, to see everything as a war, to win the war, and to not get out of this mentality. Okay, Saturn in Aries in the 11th house, which is ruled by Aquarius. So flavors Saturn in Aries with a bit of Aquarius. It plays out in an Aquarian way in the chart. So this is very interesting. So this would definitely signify someone who is drawn towards the future of innovation, drawn towards building and creating new things for the future, and also for people and for the power of the people. So it's quite a nice combination, because it balances Saturn in Aries, which can be a little bit kind of me first, I'm the best, to and a bit of this, bit drawn towards, I wouldn't say pride, but to patronize others, towards a very worldly and community-based focus, which is really good. So if those two things can come into harmony, which may be a little bit contradictory, Saturn in the 11th house in Aries will be a very powerful sign to bring something meaningful to the community, to start new ventures with community, like new community resorts or retreats, stuff like this, or certain methods, or working with community and starting that community center or starting that community idea. Definitely Saturn in Aries in the 11th house would be a great fit for that. So that's for Saturn in Aries in the 11th house. Also gives a little bit of the ability to sense what's coming and to prepare for what's coming. Saturn in Aries in the 12th house, in which flavor the energy of Saturn in Aries with Pisces, is okay. That's that's a strong combination of birth canal. So this person definitely will need, they will have a strong power to create new things, but they will also have a very strong ability to go into the world of the unformed. So it's like very like an artist is on the edge of the illusionary world and the real world. They can exist in both. Saturn in Aries in the 12th house is a little bit like this. It's kind of sitting in the house of the subconscious. So it's like propelling any kind of innovation through the inner mind, not through the conscious mind. So it can work a little bit in the shadow, but in that way it can be very interesting, because to access that Saturn in Aries energy, the person would need to go inwards, would need to understand a little bit their hidden motives, their psychology, their fear of death. It can create a lot of fear, a lot of fear. Maybe in a past life, I would even say Saturn in Aries in the 12th house would have died in a war or died in some kind of violent way. And in this life had a fear of that same violence happening to them again. Something like this could definitely be a storyline that comes out of a Saturn in Aries in the 12th house, because it somehow flavors a bit the past life. And Saturn in Aries is like there was too much ego or violence or anger or heat. There was too much heat. And in this life, there's a need to understand the heat through the psychology before bringing it into the world. So that would be Saturn in Aries in the 12th house. So hopefully that's a little bit of advice. Now I'll just put at the end here, I don't do Western astrology. I'm going to make a separate video about this, but I follow what's called direct sky astrology. You can see this written on my website and on these videos. Now, in order to understand your direct sky chart, it's the sidereal chart. It's closer to sidereal, but it's the direct alignment of the sky, right? So Western astrology is an astrology that is based on the Northern Hemisphere seasons, that is not moving itself with the precession of the equinoxes. So the astrology I look at, and the astrology that I think is the most powerful for you to understand your chart, is to at least use sidereal. If not, see an astrology that does direct sky. I can link below great astrologer Esther, who I follow, who does readings for direct sky. Or alternatively, you can go to astro.com, and if you put in the mid-Muller sidereal, this is the closest you get to direct sky method. Mid-Muller, I think it's 1 degree 20 this way in when you do extended chart selection in astro.com. So it's important that you get the direct sky. Why? Because we want to be in alignment to the stars. We want to understand the true alignment of the planets. Anything else is more philosophical based, it's more ideological based, it's not scientifically based. So the direct sky astrology method is closer to a science because it's observing physical nature. Like, okay, we can have an argument about astrology being pseudoscience or science, this is another thing. But in order to use it the best possible way, we have to be in the closest observation of nature if we want to be scientific. So direct sky works towards a scientific understanding of astrology through direct alignment, and direct alignment to you of your chart when you're born, etc. So that said, all my calculations, dates, etc. are within direct sky. They're not in Western. So you will have to... Generally, it moves it back 20 degrees, 23 degrees. So if your Saturn is in Capricorn at 12 degree in Western, it will go to Sagittarius, my maths, I think 20 degree or 15 degree or something like this in the sign before. So generally you will go to the sign before unless it's late degree, unless it's 23 degrees until 30 degrees. If your Saturn is in 23 degrees until 30 degrees in a sign in Western, it will stay in that sign in direct sky astrology, although it will be in the earlier degrees, which also play a part. I don't go into degrees in this video. This is just a general. But if you want to know deeper stuff, if you want to understand your degrees, understand how that Saturn that I described is playing with other planets and having a whole story, which is very important to know and to understand in our charts, because it tells us what we're kind of meant to do and if we're on the right track. Please go onto my site and book a reading, or you can just text me on Instagram. I don't mind to answer small questions for people. I am happy to give this knowledge. I don't want to make a lot of money off this. I want to try and create this to help because I believe in it so much, and I think it's really important that we come back to direct sky. I think this is a little bit my mission and that I need to share with the world. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be making more videos for Saturn in other signs and putting this name at the end. So thank you for watching.